Newtown Square Finance Committee meeting, April 19th, 2023. Call the meeting to order. We're going to do a roll call. We're going to start Larry Fisher.
Present.
Alex Sukas.
Here.
Scott Trotter.
Here.
Ed Naples here. Lisa Passell. I do not see Lisa. Okay. We have Steve Meese, Township Manager. Yvonne, I apologize. Bullock, I remember. Our Finance Manager. Great. Okay, next order of business, we do a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next order of business. We need to consider approval of this agenda. Alex Sukas so moves. Ed Naples second. Is there any comments, updates, edits to the agenda? I see none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, next order, public comment from the agenda. We have folks in the audience here. Anybody online, Steve? Oh, okay, no more online?
We haven't been doing online for a while, so we.
Don't tell Eddie.
Yeah.
He's a little slow. Okay,
We take public comment two ways at this, well, three ways at
Yeah.
this point. You can drop something off in the blue box out front.
Yeah.
And we have it checked before the meeting. You can send it through an email to publiccomment@newtowntownship.org. And we would share that with you. And then anybody being here in the meeting.
got it. Okay, I see no public comment for the agenda, so that will be accepted. Next order is minutes from the March 15th, 2023 meeting. Hopefully, folks have had a chance to take a look at those minutes. Are there any comments, updates related to those minutes?
Yes. My name was misspelled as Ed Skukas.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to go there.
Man,
So it's-
okay,
I'm only gonna vote yes if we change Ed to Alex and.
got it.
Section 9,
Sorry about that.
don't worry. With that change though, I'll move to adopt the minutes.
I can second, Ed Naples second, Alex Sukas made the motion. Are there any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Perfect. Okay, we're on to reports. I don't know if this is going to be Yvonne or Steve.
So I think you have actually a report on your desk that
Yes.
Yvonne's put together. We're still working through some challenges with the I went back through and kind of, believe it has to do with the allocations in the system. This is where when you had somebody who was doing it for
Yes.
8 years,
Okay.
they knew all the places to look.
Yeah, where the
When I
bodies
haven't
were.
done it for 8 years, I've forgotten all the places to look.
I feel your pain.
So we're figuring that out. Yvonne's been working on a lot of things, getting us set to move forward. She's been working on keeping all the accounts that we're not having problems with up to date, and she's working on all of the backlog as well. Plus, she's doing all the reporting for we have ARPA reporting that needs to be done, and some other reporting like that. And Yvonne's been heavily working on all of that, keeping us up to date on all those other things that need to be. I hope to have answers in the next 30 days and be ready to give you reports up through up current. So that's our goal, hopefully by the next meeting.
Is there any like a 30-second highlight in terms of where we stand on
Yeah.
the date on the real estate collection? Because I know this is
Yeah,
this
real
is
estate
timing.
collection, we're doing well on. It's on track.
Nothing to
Is
be of concern.
nothing to be on concern on the real estate collection itself in regards to collecting what's been billed. What I will say, what I'm seeing is some additional challenges to people's assessments, particularly businesses that are struggling. And so I think they're saying that it impacts the value of our assessment of our property. We've kind of, the school boards kind of argued differently on that. The property's still the value of the property, the building is the building, those kind of things.
So, Steve, when businesses are successful, do they come in and say their taxes should be higher?
No, they don't normally do that.
Well, is the primary responsibility with the school board or is it the township in terms of defending the appeal?
So we work in conjunction. So what we do is we partner with the school board. The school board usually takes the lead. They have a lot more
More skin in
at
the game,
stake
right?
than we do.
Yeah.
And instead of having our attorney and their attorney do it, we have an attorney do it, and then we split the cost pro rata based on who pays what portion of, who gets what portion of the tax. That's how we split the legal bills. On occasion, we've gotten our attorney involved because we feel like we have more to bring to the table on a particular issue. You know, if it has to do related potential zoning or something like that, that impacts where things are with the assessment, we get more involved. But typically it's the school district takes the lead and we just go along for the ride. And if we need to support them in any way, we do. And we've been doing that for probably, I don't know when it wasn't done. It's been way done before I got here, and it's been very, very effective. They're never not wanting to do one that we want to do. So
That's what I was getting at. Is
yeah,
there any
because
where you can get a conflict.
well, I mean, they always, if it means enough to us that we want to do it and they're not, it means more to them. You know, I mean, it just doesn't, it's just that way. So that's not so much the issue. Our school district will always step up and do that. The assessment board has in the past been pretty steady with those things, but the place where we're starting to see it is, and I say with the business, it's like office complexes that are not renting.
Yeah.
And so therefore they're arguing that they don't have the same value because they're not renting. And so it's those kind of things that where the real challenges are. And you know, I kind of get that on one level. On the other level, I say the building still has value and it's still where it is. So the property and such. And usually if there is an adjustment, it's down, but it's not huge. The other thing that we're seeing, which I think is going to impact us actually greater potentially, in total, in percentage of dollars to the budget line. Some of the businesses that we anticipated at returning to their prior level before COVID have not. They're making decisions not to bring people back in the office, which where that impact comes to is the LST tax. And so we're working with the tax collector with that a little bit. I've had some conversations with them on a high level. And I started having those conversations at the end of last year. We need to have some more conversations with them on that. But I've been hearing that a couple of our major employers in town have basically either reduced staff or have less staff coming in.
Place,
we're seeing that, I think it's fair for me to say we're seeing that at AmeriHealth. We don't have the traffic that we anticipated from AmeriHealth. They don't have the number of employees here that they said that they were going to have. And so, that's just an example, but there's some others in town that are the same way. So I that's the one that I'm watching actually more closely in regards to what will the long-term impact be. I definitely think we're going to have an impact this year. There's no question in my mind. We will probably not hit our budget dollar. What I don't know is what that looks like. Is that a permanent trend? Is that a 23, 24 type trend? And that's going to change. I don't have a feeling on that. I mean, you read one article and they say working from home is here to stay. I read other articles and I hear companies saying, we want our people back in the office.
Right.
You know, and I think
Yeah,
I think it varies based on every company, you know, I mean, I think it just depends.
Yeah.
And there's
Whether or
always,
not you're 50 years old or you're 25 years old.
well, and even just what the company's philosophy is, you know, I mean, there's companies that are saying, it doesn't matter, we want everybody back in the office. There's other companies that are saying, we don't care if anybody comes back, you know, I mean, it's kind of that kind of thing. And so what I don't know is what that impact is going to have on us. And, you know, what we are aware is that I'm not seeing more movement in the Campus Boulevard group. Like I'm not seeing them leasing out a whole lot of space over there, that we're starting to see additional people coming back. So that I think is more long-term. The other, I'm not sure.
Transfer taxes, real estate transfer taxes, how are those running?
They're a little behind. Here's what I know. I've talked to a couple of realtors, just one last night. Properties that are in good shape are turning over incredibly quickly. They're not staying on the market long at all. And there's, you know, for every house, there's like 50 buyers, you know, I mean, it's that kind of a ratio. So it's more of an issue of the houses that are coming in, coming online. There are a couple that are sitting there that if the house isn't in great shape or that happens to be just not in a very good location, that's the case. But what I'm being told by multiple is that our stock is not lasting on the market very long, which is good. The thing that I think that's happening with real estate that we're seeing is, and which we kind of knew was going to happen, and we've been trying to adjust for it, is but I think it's a little more steep than what I originally planned. The new housing market obviously is going away because there's just not as much new housing being built. And so that's having an impact. What I had expected was the new houses that were going up would probably sell off really quickly because I thought there was still that demand. They're not selling as quickly as I had originally thought. So we'll see what happens or even what the developer had projected. So we'll have to see that over time.
But we're not gonna have a positive variance then. You don't expect a positive variance on the revenue line for the new construction, like more coming online than anticipated.
I don't see a positive variance in either of those two areas at all. I actually will anticipate that whole section of our budget will be down. I don't want to make a full call on that in April and say, yeah, that's for sure. But it would not surprise me if in October I'm saying, yeah, we're not going to make numbers this year.
All right, thank you. Can I ask questions about this piece of paper we got?
You can.
The ARPA funds, how are those restricted in, like, what are they restricted to, like, what we can spend them on?
Well, they're restricted based on the federal government, right? They're restricted more based on so we did not get there's a 10 million, basically, if there's $10 million that the federal government said you could count that amount towards your loss of revenue. Well, we didn't really have loss of revenue, but you could claim it anyhow, the way the federal government said, and they made it very simple. And on some level, we are claiming it that way just because the filing is easier for it. But the funds were basically open if anything related to a COVID expense or any kind of infrastructure expense, you could spend it on pretty freely. I mean, there was not a lot of restrictions. The Board of Supervisors made a decision when the monies came in. It was about 1.447, something like that. Okay, 1.46, 1.46 that came in, and they've restricted those dollars or had dedicated those dollars to stormwater related issues. And so that's where those monies are being spent.
So that we have just over $1 million and that's set aside for stormwater issues?
Yes.
And then where did the stormwater maintenance account, where did that money come from?
So the stormwater, I'm not looking.
And we're allowed to use the ARPA funds for stormwater?
Excuse me?
And we're allowed to use the ARPA funds for stormwater?
We are.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah. And so there's two different things that you're seeing. The stormwater maintenance account that you see, that is monies that come from individuals or developers who do projects. And they have to put up 10 years worth of inspections in a set aside 10 years worth of inspections as part of their project. And so if it costs us $150 only because I'm trying to use simple math, somebody would basically give us an escrow of $1,500 for the next 10 years for us to go out and do yearly inspections of their stormwater project, whatever they did. If they did a basin, if they did something underground, we send the engineer out. So that's what those dollars are for, very specifically for the purpose of going out and doing inspections. Now, what we have an ongoing responsibility to do those inspections beyond that. So, and we're getting close to having some projects that put in their 10 years worth. And then now what do we do? And I've been working with both our solicitor and some others to start saying, what are our options in doing those ongoing maintenance responsibilities? And it's really not maintenance, it's really inspections, but it's for making sure that the stormwater infrastructure that's put in on individual, or I say individual because I'm using that term very broadly.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a developer who, like listener, on those properties is being maintained to the proper level so that it, stormwater is only the stormwater maintenance or stormwater improvements only work if they are continued to be maintained. We had a situation with like that just over the corner Campus Boulevard a couple of years back. The basin filled with growth, it filled with a lot of trees. And not that that's always bad, but there was so much stuff in it that when the storms came, it actually no longer held the water. And so it was pushing water out and we kept having flooding. They've now fixed that, gone back and repaired it back to what it was originally supposed to be. And it's amazing how much less water we have out at the corner at Bishop Hollow and Campus Boulevard now. Those kind of things we know have to be done on an ongoing basis. I don't know.
You don't really have a long-term funding mechanism. You've got this 10-year window, but beyond that,
we still have the
it's still
responsibility.
gonna fall back on the township.
We still have the responsibility to do those inspections. So we've been
And that's a
talking.
state mandate.
It's funny. It's not like if we didn't do them, the state wouldn't be like breathing
Gotcha.
down
It
our
would be a
neck.
penalty. It's
But
just good governance.
It's good governance,
Yeah.
and there's the mechanism for it. Obviously, we collect the money, we have to be going and doing it. It doesn't say we have to do it every year. It's like the whole guideline is that. So we've been talking like the first couple years, do we do it every year just to make sure that it's doing, and then go to like every other year to spread it out a little bit longer to hit the needs. So, but that's where that is.
But when you do the inspection, the developer is required to bring it up to standards.
Yes, so if we go out and, and that's a, I'll go back and use the corner basin here at Campus Boulevard, because if you remember what it looked like and what it is today, we went back to the property owner, and the property owner was the one that was responsible for bringing it back to.
And that responsibility goes beyond the 10 years that they're paying for.
That's an indefinite,
Okay.
it's an indefinite responsibility.
Mhm.
You have to maintain the stormwater infrastructure that's on your property.
As an aside, you may have noticed in Monday's Inquirer, they had a big story about the Lehigh River.
Yeah.
And the whole development of the warehousing development on Lehigh and Northampton County, and how it's corrupting the Lehigh River.
Yeah.
To a massive extent. It's the runoff,
Yep.
and they don't have a solution. They have a big problem and they don't have a solution.
It's the reason why you as a group have spent a year and a half talking about stormwater, how we're going to fund it. It's the reason why I probably deal with stormwater probably somewhere between a sixth and a fifth of my scheduled working day, every day, just in what we have to deal with in these things. It's a big issue. And it's not going away. It's even if we do all the things that we think we need to do, as climate change continues to happen, and
Even though we're in a drought.
right now we're in the drought, but I mean, look where California is,
Or Fort Lauderdale.
or Fort Lauderdale, those things happen. They're happening more frequently than they ever have. And so we have to be prepared for those kind of things. And so, what do they say? The Fort Lauderdale was once in 1,000 years.
Until it happens again.
Until it happens again, right? But that's not, again, it's the level of rainfall, not how necessarily often it happens, but it's
The intensity.
It's the intensity of that, and they say that's the kind of level. So anyway, that being said, stormwater will be a priority for the township for a long time.
Any other comments on reports? I see none. Okay, we're going to move along to new business. The municipal authority and discussion around finances. I think Steve, this was planned just as kind of a introduction for information for our purposes in terms of.
Well, I think John Weaver asked the question at the last meeting.
Hey, John,
John,
no.
and
I'm
John-
teasing.
yeah, and John's unable to be here today, I guess.
I'm teasing.
So the question was asked what's the status of the stormwater stormwater's in my brain. What's the status of the municipal authority's ability to pay back the debt going forward? And so that's what I think the question was, as I interpreted it.
It's financial position.
And the reason for that question from John has to do with the fact that the debt from the municipal authority is backed by the township. In other words, if the municipal authority were to be unable to pay the bonds in a timely manner, the township would have to step in and use its taxing authority to pay that debt. And so I think that's the basis of the question. John not only is an auditor for the township, but John also served on the municipal authority board when the debt was taken. He's aware of what the significance of that debt is. And so we have both Louis and Steve from the municipal authority here today to answer any questions that you have regarding that. And they're prepared to do so.
Well, what's we've never talked about the municipal authority. We're discussing the budgets and stuff like that because they're their own entity.
They are their own entity. The only time the township usually gets involved, there are two times the township, when I say that, there's actually two. So there's two things the township does. Township supervisors appoint the board members to the municipal authority, just like all the rest of the boards and commissions. once they appoint it, they lose really basically all governing of the authority. The authority is governed by the 5-member board. And so, and then the second thing is anytime the municipal authority takes debt, then the township has to, particularly if it's a bond issue, because the bond holders look for this, the township then has to pass a resolution that it would pick up and take responsibility if that debt was not paid. So those are the two involvements that the township has. And that's why you normally don't hear about their budget. That's why, we don't discuss those things because they're a separate entity and do that. I think what John's question was, and a fair question for you to consider, was knowing that they have a $33 million bond, which, by the time you pay it off is roughly $60 million in payback. What was the plan, and is there a level of comfort that the township should have going forward that's going to be taken care
But
of?
the fiscal responsibility for servicing that debt
Correct.
is going to remain with the municipal authority. It's not going to cascade back to the township.
Yeah. Is there any reason why they don't think they're going to be able to do that?
Right.
What's the status of that?
Do you want to speak to that? I don't. But we invited them so that.
Could you introduce? Yeah.
Louis Rosental, Vice Chairman of the Municipal Authority, Steve Mackel, who's a member of the board as well.
Hey, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
And just before you start, Louis, I want to say this, that one of the challenges that I have is I get to wear 2 hats.
Yeah.
I am the township manager. I am also the operations manager for the authority. And so because of that, I sometimes am in conflict.
Yeah.
And so we thought it was best that the members of the authority board come in and speak to that. I've met with them, the authority, and that's what they discussed. And that's why they're both here today.
Great. Thank you.
The question was?
The question was, what's the status, I guess, of the $33 million bond? That was
So,
taken?
debt service has been going on since it was issued 3.5-4 years ago. We've now exhausted the original interest reserve, which is typically set up when you do a project that is going to have revenue generated later on. The authority is currently servicing the debt. We did pass a budget in February, the authority board took a couple of steps. The first of which was to break out discrete charges for debt service, for infrastructure, and for normal operating billing for sewage usage, as a way of being somewhat transparent to the ratepayers. And so in sum total, the number went up. We issued contemporaneous with the budget adoption notes to the budget, which explains what we're doing this year and what we will likely do in the ensuing years. As you could probably guess, costs have gone up. The primary expense for the municipal authority is out of our control. We get charged pass-through charges from Delcora to CDCA, from Delcora to RHM, which are the two sewage conveyance authorities we convey our sewage to. And we're basically in the passenger seat. We have no control over that expense. So we forecast it and pay it.
How much is left on the bond?
Well, I was thinking and this is ignorance on our part, I apologize. Is your financial information a matter of public record? Like, could we go on a website of the municipal authority and see your financial reporting that you do?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe what we could do, Steve Bradley, when you get a chance, if you could circulate to the members of the board here, that website, so that we can actually become educated, because we're obviously sitting here thinking is there a dire situation looming 2 years from now, 3 years from now, where the township would be at risk? I think that's our fiscal responsibility. I think what Alex is going at.
So I would just say this, first of all, the municipal authority shares the township website. So if you go on the township website
Got it.
and,
You have your own-
and type in municipal authority, it will take you to their page. It will have their finances. And their finances are up through 2021, just like ours, because 2022 is still being completed and the audit will be being done. So just wanted to let you know that. I think your question was, what was the outstanding balance?
No, outstanding time.
Time.
The time on the
Yeah.
debt is 25 years.
Okay. And what's our bond rating?
Our townships is,
No, on the
Municipal authority.
so it's because the townships is AAA's, it also brought them in as AAA.
Okay.
The rates are very favorable.
I would think so.
The base at the.
Yeah, yeah, they
time were issued,
like-
the-
Well, I mean, I have to tell you,
25-year rates, or you like, they're 5 years?
Is there adjustable?
no, it's not. And so we looked brilliant.
Timing is everything.
Timing is everything. I mean, heck,
Kudos while you can.
yeah, well, I mean, in
Still
all,
gotta pay it.
you know, it's, I mean, I have to say, seriously, we've done 3 borrowings in the time that I've been here that have been major borrowings. And this being one of them, we really couldn't have picked better times to hit the market. If you look at, and Yvonne and I've gone over just recently, the township's debt, all of our debt's actually in notes instead of bonds at this point. And I don't think anything's over 1.75. Is that right? Yeah. The municipal authorities is a little bit higher because it's out longer and it's a larger amount. But I think the overall is still under 3, the average overall. So it's phenomenal when you think about that and where it is.
So for what we do on a finance committee, is there any concern that we need to be aware of in the near future about how the budget would be set up? I mean,
I would give you an opinion. It's not a finding of the authority, so it's
give
just
me
my
your
personal opinion.
yeah,
The township guarantees a bond and the township should periodically ask the questions that you just asked this morning. What's the status? Does it look like the authority has an ability to pay the bond and its expenses and maintain a functioning sewage conveyance system?
fair enough.
In terms of the 2 wild card variables, you have interest rate and you have inflation. So obviously, interest rate and what we're hearing and what we sense is that worked really in our favor. We have this nasty thing called inflation over here, and I'm wondering whether or not is this spike in inflation, and presumably it's not necessarily going to go back to 0.
Right.
Has that been factored in so that you can look out 5 years and say, all right, we're still in good shape, or our numbers are going to get tight?
Well, the bond contemplated a construction budget. At the moment, the bond was issued and it's embedded within the bond. And that was the basis for coming up with revenue to help pay debt service. That said, we just adopted a budget and inflation has hit a lot of things. So we had an accident on Goshen Road. Somebody broke a sewer main. And the cost of actually repairing it was much greater than the cost of making a repair 2 years earlier. So we factored in an increased amount for maintenance just because raw materials
Labor.
have gone up. So
Yeah.
And I'm going to speak and
We'll see which hat you have on.
Yeah, and the thing I'm going to say is this: I think the municipal authority board has been really responsible in 2 areas. One is they've made a plan for debt, and it's a plan for the full 25 years, how they're going to cover the debt for 25 years. And so they've implemented that as part of the budget. And so, from the township's perspective, as long as the ratepayers are paying that plan of debt service, that should be healthy and that should not be an issue. In addition to that, the authority has started to take on the issue that it realizes, kind of similar to how we're looking at stormwater, but they're looking at the fact that they have miles and miles of underground pipes that are, many of them 50 years old and older.
Right.
And the authority has gone through and said, we need more capital dollars in order to be able to, on a regular basis, be able to do that. Last year, the authority went out and it went to do a project of replacing 350 feet of pipe. The cost, the bid came back at $350,000. And when we extrapolated that over the miles of roadway, that number is staggering of what it would cost to go back in and replace. And so they've had an infrastructure fee in place for probably 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And what I can tell you is they've taken that infrastructure fee and said, it's not enough. And they've increased it. And they intend to continue to increase it over the next 5 years, just like they're going to increase the debt service. So they're acting responsibly, fiscally responsible in their side to address current and future needs, as well as take care of debt.
Thanks for coming in. I mean, from my perspective, we gotta stay in our lane. We're just a little advisory committee here on finances. We don't have anything to do with the municipal authority unless it's going to impact the township budget. And even then, our role is merely advisory. So I do appreciate you coming in and talking to us, but it sounds like there's nothing on our end that we need to be concerned about. Unless there's something you want to air. This is your chance. But I mean, you guys collect, we don't have anything in the budget that goes to the municipal authority, right? As a taxpayer who has a septic system, whoops, I'm sorry. I don't have, I'm not contributing anything to the municipal authority, am I? As a taxpayer.
As a taxpayer, no, you are not.
Interesting.
Occasion, let me just say, occasionally we work together on an ordinance that's beneficial to both parties. And so we would then be jointly working together, and there'll be a small fee for legal services that when we do that. But I just want
I'm
to
looking for a line item in the budget.
There is, I understand that's what I also realize there's people that are listening, and if they hear that and I say, well, we're working on this ordinance, which I know we're going to be working on a grease trap ordinance. And I don't want somebody to come back and say, well, you said
About this.
I just want to, I always try to be super clear that, but there is no line item in the budget that goes to the municipal authority.
But you do have legal expenses like with 537.
Yeah, but thank you for bringing that up. Just so you know, and that's a really good point, Louis, that the township still owns the 537 plan, which is the plan for how we will sewage the township, how we'll provide sewage to the township. So we own that plan. So, and that can never be given to the authority. The township always has to have that role. And so we just did the build out on the west side of the town. That was this $33 million build out. We still have sections, and Alex expressed the fact that he was still on septic. And we still have folks who are still on septic systems in the community. And so those folks, you know, someday, you know, DEP keeps saying we shouldn't have anybody on lot septic. They would like for the whole township to be in the authority, or, you know, in our plan. And so that someday we will probably have to address public sewage throughout the entire town. But right now, we've got this part of the project going. It will take 25 years for us to get that debt taken care of. And so that's the focus and where we are.
And to make it clear, when you do that planning, that is a township expense that all the taxpayers
Yes,
are paying for.
yes.
So when they do the planning to sewer your area, that planning part is a township expense.
Take your time on that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who feel like you do. There's others who don't.
Thank you guys very much.
Any other questions? I think we're good. Gentlemen, thank you.
No, thank you.
Super. Next order of business, our dilemma. The stormwater. And what we did was, we attached the draft that we had initially prepared for the meeting on April 10th of the Board of Supervisors, which was then subsequently, our participation was postponed. So I know Lisa did an update that she sent, that Alex indicated that she sent. And I think rather than spinning our wheels.
I'm having Steve try to pull that update
Oh,
up.
perfect. Oh, okay.
I'm assuming it's the couple
Yeah,
comments
the
that I
comments that
said.
you got, and then I had one in particular, and we can get to that.
Were you able to find it?
So, while he brings that up, I mean, just in general, I'm gonna give a comment. Now, I hope nobody takes this personal. Cause this is my view of this. I wouldn't present this like this.
Okay.
And my feeling is this. It doesn't really reflect a year and a half's worth of work. You just said it earlier, Steve. We've been looking at this for a year and a half. And in the initial committee analysis, there's 3 bullet points that say fee, tax, and that's it. And it seems like there needs to be more substance behind what we're discussing here. I don't even know what we're asking the direction of the Board of Supervisors for. Usually we would come in, you give a presentation about here's all the things we've learned, here's the townships we've met with, here's the things we've done. We've gotten to this point where we need to know about a choice between this and this from you, not just, hey, give us some direction, but here are the numbers. If you do fees, here's how much it's going to come out. If you do the other thing, it's going to be this. And as a former trial lawyer, the document itself doesn't, I would never present this because it doesn't, first of all, it's going to become a public document. And so when you read it, you don't really understand, like, it's not clear. Like some of these bullets are, like there's a bullet that says current MS4 permit. I don't know what that even means to somebody reading the document as a lay person outside. So that's sort of my comment. It just seems you're going to stand in front of the Board of Supervisors and say, we've done a year and a half of work. You think you can do a fee or a tax? What do you want us to do now? I would sort of change the approach a little bit. It's just my own personal.
No, this is why we did this. Exactly why we did this.
And I offered a year, I think it was almost a year ago or 9 months ago. I did offer to go through and do like more of a presentation format. Anybody that worked with me would have known I absolutely hate bullet points. Never. I've done a lot of trials and gotten up in court and used PowerPoints, but never had a bullet point because it's distracting. People tend to read things rather than listen to you. Listen to me as opposed to reading what I have up on the screen, unless I separately take a moment to read this. But as a separate document that the public will get, I just don't think that it's going to be informative. And you know, I'm happy to sit down and go through in detail and put more info in. But if I was a Board of Supervisor, I would say, okay, what have you learned that we don't know after a year and a half? What do you got for us? There you go. There's a couple typos.
Yeah.
A couple typos we've got to fix.
Yeah, okay. You hit the dilemma, because we've gone back and forth on this. He was smiling a little bit as to this being obviously a very hot potato. And where we don't have a formal recommendation, we don't have a great solution. And so it was intentional on our part that we not put into this the bad news. Like, the numbers are very large, dwarf the current budget, regardless of which way you go, and if there's grant money that comes in at some point. And so what we tried to do was balance, and we were clearly intentional, Alex, on not putting all of the gory bad news in this, because we really were anticipating that the Board of Supervisors could understand the numbers. They know that we're talking about at least $10 million, if not $20 million. You can look at that in relationship to current budget is $6.2 million for real estate taxes. So you're like, where are we going to get $10 million like out of the blue? No. We're going to triple the township's real estate taxes. So we intentionally didn't put that in. Because we professionally respect their understanding that we know this is bad news. We were more looking for them to tell us what we really need to pursue, which path do we need to pursue. And we were planning on speaking orally, like, if it's a real estate tax increase, it's going to be 16%, raise $1 million. Plain and simple. Now, we could put that in here, but we intentionally wanted more them to engage. So that's why we kind of did this at a very high level. Now, if they want all the details that we have, we can give them all the details, but we'd rather tell them, we'd rather get them to say, okay, for example, when we started, I think it was the general consensus was we were clearly leaning towards fee in order to satisfy the equitable resolution amongst all property owners. Given the litigation that's happened in the intervening period of time, we were expecting the solicitor would say, look, the issue of fee may not be resolved for years. Can we sit here and wait for years in order to take action? Or do we want to take a near-term step and start with a small plan and then have them say, okay, if we're going to go and raise X for next year when the ARPA money runs out, what will that cost us? And we can go back and do the math. That's why, I mean, over the elapse of time, all the work that was done, some of it now is really questionable as to whether or not it's even useful. That's why we didn't want to put all that into this, because it's why talk about fee at this point unless the solicitor says fee is still on the table.
But I think, first of all, a lot of the numbers that you just gave in the bad news, you just gave in a public meeting that's online. And
Yes.
now everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think
There's no secrets.
There's no harm in laying out the bad news to the public. This is my own personal opinion. People need to know what we're facing. I mean, if we sugarcoat it in any way, it's going to make the impact worse down the road. We need to start a little bit of the banging of the table at this point and say, here are the numbers. My view, and I'm not worried about hurting people's feelings. I don't care. Let's just put all the data out there and say to the Board of Supervisors, these are the numbers, they're really bad, and explain a little bit more detail, for instance, why we can't do the fee. Explain that.
Yeah.
There is in Westchester this case. I don't know that all the Board of Supervisors know that, but just I don't know. I could see this being a good half-hour presentation with some real meat behind it. And right now, I see it more as, hey, guys, what do you want us to do? As opposed to us being advisory, what we are, here's what we advise. A different viewpoint.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Alex. And I think that the thing that came back, Steve, if you'll go to, I think it's the fourth bullet or fourth thing. So go down 1, 2, 3, one more, maybe the sixth. Go one more down. That's the one. The things I think that were that in order for us, and when I say us, I'm thinking from the finance committee side. Obviously, I have a different responsibility as the staff, but you know, that we started really getting into this question of, is the board open to, you know, what's the board's thoughts when the money runs out? You know, are you wanting to do something specific for stormwater? You know the impact. I mean, the board knows the numbers probably better than this committee, in that we presented them to them in multiple different forms. They know, they've had the engineer give them a report that says that the system itself is about, I think it's 18 million or so just for the system itself that exists today of the value. And then there's another to do the expansions. They know there's another between 23 and 30 million to address the older neighborhoods that don't have the pre-1970s neighborhoods that don't have the stormwater in it. And so the real question comes down to and there's even a question legally, because I'm going through with the solicitor on this, and this is why it's so involved. There's no question that we can do a special assessment in neighborhood for sidewalk, curbs, and road. Absolutely no question at all. The question is, can you do a special assessment for stormwater? And the solicitor says that he thinks we can, but he hasn't seen anything that says for sure definitive that in a second-class township you can do that.
Oh, that's just lawyer talk. Trust me.
Yeah, well, I
He's
know.
never gonna say it's for sure.
Well, I get that, but I mean, but you got to have you need to have some guidance from the solicitor saying, yes, you can do this. Or at least I think you can do this. And so that's been a conversation that we've had, and that addresses the hybrid model. And if we want the solicitor to spend more time in reviewing that, I need the board to give us authority to take that step. And so I need the board to say, yes, we would consider it as an option. You know, would we consider, if it's, let's say it's $6 million to do a project in the Heights, would we consider a special assessment to those who got the benefit for that $6 million and do that? And if the answer is yes, then we need to involve the solicitor, verify that we can do so, and move forward. But that takes the board's action that you don't have the authority to do. And that's where the challenge came with this committee, is we really needed to get some legal direction on a couple issues now. For even example, the whole issue of the municipal authority. The question that's out there, and I get that it's not answered today, and he won't be able to answer it either, but we looked at 4 communities, I believe, that did municipal authority stormwater pieces. They're all done by fee. And because that's an authority only has the authority to issue a fee, they can't tax. And so the question with what happened with that lawsuit, does that change any of that? Does that even allow for what's happening in all of those communities? And so there's just more questions than there are answers right now. And I think that's where the committee came back, the subcommittee came back and said, before we spend a lot of time figuring all this out, getting legal advice and all of those things. We just need to understand if the board says, look, let's put it as part of our taxes and move forward, and we're just going to go do that. We have a clear direction. We know what to go do.
But my point is like on the hybrid model, go back to the slide that explains what a hybrid model is.
Yeah.
Which slide is that?
I think it's the next one. Steve. No, which one is it? Maybe it's the first one? No,
No, we don't, we intentionally did not
no, we
have this
didn't.
become a 25-page document where for each area we have like that, or we have a sheet on what is MS4. We apologize. We were trying to work directly for communication with the Board of Supervisors. And to the extent the public wants to engage, what I felt was the key issue here was you need to have an advisory commission. You need to have a citizens advisory commission. The townships that we all looked at immediately recognized that you needed to have that as a public forum, that would help people become educated about what's the MS4, what's the difference between a fee versus a tax. But we didn't want to burden the supervisors because they already know that. So it's like, who is your audience? If your audience is the public, you're correct. This thing would have been dramatically different and much more detailed. But we were kind of really gearing this to the board and not worrying about the public at this point, unless they wanted to engage. And I'm still looking for the right path here. Clearly, Lisa and I were very.
So the board knows what the hybrid model is?
Well, I think that the intent and Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, the bullet point is really a talking point. That's more than it is
Right.
it's
Just
here's
for
what we're
example,
talking about.
for example, we would
And-
just do this.
And we would explain what the hybrid model is.
Oh, okay. So when it says like Westchester University versus Westchester, you will explain what.
That is
case
correct. And what I
Oh.
will do is point to Rich Sokol and say, Rich, can you give the board any further information about where that litigation stands? Because Rich may come back and say it's going to be years before it's resolved, or clearly it's unlikely, highly unlikely that the taxing authority is going to prevail, which opens the door to Steve's point. Is using the municipal authority and a fee structure, is that an end run around what Westchester did? Where they did it as a fee administered by the township itself as compared to a municipal authority? Is there a quirk there that you can play on?
I mean, it's one of the reasons why townships set up the municipal authorities in the first place. A lot of times is they want to have a separate governing body attack the issue.
Right.
And they want it to be based off of a fee structure versus a tax structure. So, I mean, that's often the case. So that's not unusual. But the case does bring into question. It may impact even how the authority could approach it, in that the authority may only be able to charge the fee to property owners that are getting direct benefit from stormwater. And so the question becomes, what does that look like and what does that mean?
How do you calculate?
How do you calculate that?
Didn't you
And-
say that there were like 4 communities you looked at?
That-
And
yeah,
that they were all
They were all fee and they.
well, I mean, we had,
successful.
yeah, but
Well, up
But-
to,
this
case.
court case has come in within the last 6 months. And well, probably a little longer than that now, but we had a direction we were headed as a subcommittee. They were focused and they were really getting ready to kind of present a much more like what Alex was looking at, kind of an approach. And then this came in and we said, what does this mean now? It could impact us. Like, it would probably be irresponsible for the board to say, we're just going to go issue a fee today, because the court case gives you at least, yeah, I believe it's going to be appealed, but and I haven't heard whether it was or not, but the whole piece is it changes the landscape in which you're operating in. And so that's part of the challenge.
Westchester University versus West
West
Tech.
Tech,
Yes,
Do you have a?
you have a,
Public university,
Right,
part of the Pennsylvania
Not,
state
not
system.
private,
Correct. Correct.
big difference.
Correct.
yeah.
Bingo.
But their argument was an argument that would cross over. I mean, as I understand it, I didn't read the whole case and but I had our attorney give me a review enough so I could understand, put it in the language that I'm simple and I need to understand it. But basically, what he said was the case is such that it's challenging the concept of whether you can charge somebody for something that they're not getting a direct impact for in the fee. And that's what the whole issue was in that. So if we do, if we use the fees to improve streams, because streams are part of our MS4 requirement, then unless that stream is on that personal property of that individual, the question is whether or not you could charge a fee to a nonprofit entity for that purpose. If they're tax exempt, because they're really saying it's a tax. If it's across the board,
For the,
kind
for
of
the
a thing,
good.
for the good of all,
Of the community.
versus something that's directly like a street light that hangs out in front of their building or in front of their property. They get the direct benefit of that street light, or a hydrant that's right there on their property. They get the direct benefit. There's no question that those things can be charged. And we actually, for our hydrant and street light tax, we tax nonprofits or tax exempt properties for those, because it's a service that we're providing that they get a direct benefit for, and there's no break for that. That's what the state code says. This area gets to be the question mark unless it's directly on their property that we're doing, and then we could charge for directly on their property. But then my question is, should we be making them do it because they can probably do it cheaper than we can? I mean, those are the challenges that are before us.
So this thing is sort of putting the restrictions to everything, so having this lawsuit there.
No, I think what it's saying is, what we need to say to the board is, look, we looked at all of this. We looked at the possibility of a fee. We looked at the possibility of all these things. The only direction that we know for sure today that you can go without any problem is a tax. And are you willing to do that? Is that something that you'd even consider? Because, there's all kinds of ramifications to that as well. Sure. And so if they're not willing to consider it, I don't think you as a finance committee or the subcommittee want to spend a lot of time putting a whole lot more together if they're not going to want to do anything like that.
And if we look at it with if you were.
And I think that was Tina's recommendation, by the way, from the supervisor.
If you were a betting man, would you rather have the fee? Or would you rather have the tax?
So here's it. If I'm a betting man, in what regards? Like,
well, if you looked at it and said, what would we like to do?
If I was looking at it a long-term approach, I would say I think the fee is a better method in that when and if let's say that we have $50 million worth of infrastructure that we think between what we need to put in, what needs to be taken care of, inflation, the fact that MS4 never goes away, $50 million that needs to be addressed over time. If I would argue for MS4, I'm okay that being a tax because it's something that repeats itself every 2 years, or I'm sorry, every 5 years. And it probably is, it's an ongoing kind of thing. I think that once we address stormwater, there's a 50-year life cycle of most stormwater pipes that are there and sometimes longer. And so if it's done right, you have a 50-year life cycle, you address your 50-year life cycle. And if you set it up as a fee you may be exaggerated in the beginning because you have a big hole to dig out of. It's easier to bring that back because it's specifically related to something. I always get concerned when we just dump something into taxes, that the tax gets lost. You know, unless it's specific for a specific purpose, like streetlights, I can only spend it on streetlights. Hydrant, I can only spend it on hydrant. So I always get concerned in a tax if it's something that's going to potentially go away in 10 or 15 years or 20 years, then I don't want it to just be sucked into, we all got used to paying this and now we continue to pay this. It just seems responsibility wise to me that if the public sees that I'm spending X number of dollars addressing a problem that the township has right now, but when that problem's addressed, I'm never going to have to pay for that again, or I'll only have to pay a maintenance fee going forward. I'm okay with that, right? And if we explain that to that direction, I think if it gets in the tax, I get worried about it getting lost.
So then why not have a separate stormwater tax like you have a fire hydrant tax and a streetlight line item? Put it out as a line item.
Yeah.
People see, then they know exactly what it's going to. And plus down the road, if we resolve the stormwater issue entirely, which we won't, but you could remove the tax.
That is a possibility. It goes back to the question that you all had. And it maybe that's the simple answer today. It is, you know, some of the major contributing folks end up paying nothing then, you know, just some of the folks that have the largest contribute. I mean, I look at Episcopal Academy, they have a large amount of impervious coverage that's on their property, and they would walk away and have no contribution to it.
There's no way to get them to contribute.
Not today. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's about.
Yeah.
I mean, I share your concern. My kids go to Episcopal and I think they're getting away with something there, but we can't do anything about it. So we have to move on.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not fair that I have a property that I'm gonna, you know, I contribute to the stormwater runoff like a lot, but it's a tax and I'll just pay it. And
Yeah.
put a line item. I mean, that's something that should be, if you're gonna talk about this with the board, rather than just saying, we can't do fee because there's a lawsuit, and so it's tax. Are you willing to do a tax? I mean, we gotta lay out, here's what it, you know, these are sort of the amounts. You could do it as a line item tax that we could eventually take away.
I'd have to verify that. I think we
But
can.
if it's a fee, then this will, does have.
If it's a fee,
Assuming it's.
well, you could have a fee that they didn't. Okay.
Or
You-
DC or whatever.
You could do a fee to everybody. And it would really be kind of like a tax, because the nonprofits or the tax exempt folks would be out. They wouldn't have to pay it. So you could do that, and you could call it a fee. I believe you could, I mean, under that level, you can do that. But your target audience is different. And in how you're doing it. It's, I shouldn't say different. When we typically think of fee, we think everybody pays it, but it would be almost like just a fee. It's a flat tax is what it ends up being. That's what the fee ends up being, but you could call it a fee.
So it's gonna contribute for everybody. Why would we not?
That case.
Because the implications of the
Westchester
case, because
University.
of
Yeah.
the direct correlation.
Yeah.
And Westchester University actually put in a stormwater maintenance system. So it gets even more complicated.
Yeah.
And that's something
And
we
most
talked
of our
about
properties have.
before, which
Yeah.
before you came with, there are a lot of properties that have stormwater management within. So do you give them a credit?
Oh, well, you have to.
You know.
The law says you have to.
Yeah.
And you should.
Yeah, so, but then
But then
you're
it
going to
becomes,
each property and trying to evaluate how
Yeah.
much
And then you're-
is this guy
Right.
contributing, who's got 10 acres versus this person who's got 1 acre.
it becomes very tedious and expensive to administer. That's why if you head down that road, you've got to be willing to spend a significant amount of money to actually stand up the administration of it.
And
litigate.
that's the
Yeah,
that's the
well, that's what
reason
you're
why
defending
you would
against.
go the other side and just say, we're gonna add $2 million to our tax bill because we need to go do this, and we're not gonna worry about it. We're gonna go do it. We don't worry, going back to your comment of what my preference is. That was my preference. But
Reality.
if reality tells me what we should do, which I don't like, but is we should just put it as part of the tax bill, go start the process. Engage the engineer to start looking at a long-term answer, but on the short term, we start putting $1 million or so aside a year just for the purpose of addressing stormwater. And we're only keeping up within what the requirements are really for MS4 and a little bit more. Because MS4 is probably looking, I think we looked at it's 1.7, 1.8 million over a 5-year period. So when you start taking that out, you're not having a whole lot of extra if you have $1 million, because you're using 2/3 of it or 2/5 of it, I'm sorry, to just to do your MS4 requirements. So you're not building up it's not like you're building up this great amount of money. And if I say the word to you that we're going to do a 16% increase just to cover stormwater in your taxes, my guess is that, I mean, that's a big number. And, we didn't, over the last 8 years that I've been here, we've done everything pretty much gradually, step by step. We've addressed the road program by adding 50,000 more every year to do that. And so there are ways to do that. The stormwater problem, though, we just had people complaining just over the last storm what it did. And so we've got a lot of issues to address with it. It's different.
And that's why I advocate the blunt,
Yeah,
over the head approach.
I know.
Stand up in front of the public. I mean, you guys wrote an article.
I have a
going
suit of
out.
armor.
Yeah, I mean, you have an article going out.
Yeah.
We need to keep educating the public. No matter how much you educate the public, somebody's still gonna come in and say, oh, what? I didn't know this was going on.
Yeah.
But
No, you're
you
sure.
have to keep doing it. And my thought was you stand up in front of that meeting and say, here's how much, remind them how much the engineer said we need. That translates to X dollars. This is a serious problem. We as an advisory committee yet haven't come up with a conclusion on how much we could, what we recommend for doing this versus that. That's where we're looking for supervisor input. But the reality is a harsh one. And
It is a harsh one.
and, we don't like the 16%. Nobody wants that. But if we don't start addressing the problem now, 16% will become 20%. And so, I'm all for laying this out there as much as we can.
I think Alex has just decided he's gonna join our little subcommittee.
No,
And then, no, but I mean, I would like to put more bad news into this before we actually do the presentation.
Okay.
So I think so that we can, in fairness, not sugarcoat problem or just assume they understand the magnitude of the problem.
but then it was between kicking the can down the road and updating the presentation. I would just rather get it in front of the Board of Supervisors. We waited a long time for this.
So here's the thing.
Oh,
So I'll just say this. Yeah, no, I got you. The supervisors have said this, and I think it's a fair statement. They want it coming from you as a whole, as a committee versus as the subcommittee coming out. They just
Yeah.
think that's important.
Yeah.
And so, and they've done that with other committees as
is
well.
that right? Did they say that? Because that's a different.
What?
Is that what they want? They
Yeah, that's
want it
what
from-
through letter, yeah.
They
that's-
want it from the committee as
Yeah.
opposed from the subcommittee?
Yes.
That's different.
Yeah.
That's
So.
a different.
So
Yeah, we
here's,
discussed
that.
it.
So my comment to you is this. If you want to change the presentation, you can change the presentation. If you have specifics that you want to change it, then we can go and do that. And if everybody agrees to those specifics, you would do that and you could approve that today. You could make those changes and do the presentation at a meeting before your next meeting. If not, then my comment to you would be you could work on the presentation over the next month to get it to where you want it to be. And, you know, I would suggest that Alex be more involved if everybody else is in agreement. And we would have to have either Lisa and or Ed
Mhm.
be less involved, depending on where Alex's involvement.
Just me. I mean,
No, no,
Well,
No,
but my point is, if you have a specifics that you want to try to get in, but you just have to be careful. You can't,
Yeah, I'm just thinking if three of us meet and discuss this, is that a meeting?
that's a meeting.
meeting.
I mean, I can't edit it and ship it around, right?
Yeah,
That you can do,
right.
that you can do,
So maybe that's the path.
yes.
That
That
we get.
just, you can't
And
get
even
into a
question
discussion
marks.
about it. That's the
Maybe
challenge.
we can't do it as a group together. Maybe the path is that each of you look at this and insert comment. Like, what do you mean by this?
Happy to do.
Expand on this. That way Lisa and I can then regroup. It won't be a meeting and we can issue the revised. That way, I think path-wise, it's gonna go a lot quicker.
Okay.
Okay?
Works for me.
In terms of, I understand Leonard's not here, obviously.
It may be online.
Cycle wise,
He may be watching you.
I was thinking, given the timing, is May presentation in May, is that doable for the Board of Supervisors? Is that a good time for them to?
It's a great time. I
Yes.
won't be there the last meeting in May.
Step right up.
It's good because that's the month that rains the most.
Yeah, let me,
Stormwater. It'll be.
if you were to finalize this at your next meeting, which would be the 17th of May, you could present at the 22nd of May before the board.
Yeah, that makes sense, because then we'll have all the edits and then everybody will see the final version at the next meeting before it's actually presented.
Okay.
All right, so plan is, we're gonna get finance committee comment.
So do you want to give a date and a time that you want that by so that you have time to do your part?
What do you mean? Oh,
So like,
Yeah.
so in other words, if the subcommittee is going to work on this and they think it's going to take them a week to put everything in that everybody suggests, do you want all the committee giving you information by May?
Oh, I was thinking end of next week.
Yeah, I'll do it at the end of this.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
wanted
Yeah,
to give,
because you guys.
I think if you set the expectation, so everybody knows what their expectation is, that's all I'm asking.
Right.
That's all.
I mean, Lisa's not here. Larry, Scott, do you think is end of this week too short? End of next week is better for you to think about this and sleep on it?
Next week.
Okay,
Just be
end
sure.
of next week. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is, Steve, if you could make sure, I don't know if it happened already, if you could make sure that you send out the version of that Lisa just updated, the quote, latest
It's
version.
sent to everybody.
And if you could put today's date on it, so everybody knows what version it is, so we don't get confused. Okay, so put a little date on it and say, okay, then send it out to the group, and then we'll work off of that date, just to keep track of this.
Is it a PDF? It is. Why don't you get it from her in whatever format she has other than a PDF? Because some
Yeah,
people
then
may
we
not
can
be
edit
able
on
to update a PDF. And then
Yeah.
this way they can make comment right directly.
Yeah.
Okay. We have items for next point. Items, I don't think there's anything we need to vote on here, Steve, with what we just talked about. Okay, I agree. Items for the next agenda. Does anyone have any new comments? Magical, are we gonna get a Fox News Dominion settlement come in to kind of fix all this?
No, but we did get a roundup settlement,
Really?
Yeah.
Good.
$17,000, I believe.
Not gonna pay.
Any community that had MS4 requirements got
Oh, okay,
17
sure.
or got some portion
Got
of the
some
settlement,
reallocation.
nationally. So
Great. Next point, public comment. Gentlemen. Public, you're not gonna touch this one, huh? No public comment. And we are adjourned.